KA Bullets YouTube channel.
Hurry up, now tell us why you're here.
I forgot about the backup racers from last video. So, there are also backup racers. This one is Zach Zepson. There's also Hollister, Gwenther, Henderson, who is Robert Henderson's son, McCoy, Banks, and Clarkson. Terry Carboni now has this look, which means now he's the number 5 at Chevrolet Motorsports, which means that Ricky Slood also left, and now he's the number 10. Remember Kodak, who sponsored Ernie Swerven for half of last season? Well, Sterling Carlin is now sponsored by Kodak. Shift Right Racing is mostly the same, but since Craig Shift Right retired, Misty Motocross is now racing at Shift Right Racing. The Pit Stops Revolting crew has Davey Apex succeed Don Alternators in the number 84 Revolting car. And also, Rush Racing is exactly the same as last season. Same with Blaster Charger Racing, who is probably going to fail again, just like last season. The Anti-Chick Hicks team has added 2 cars, being Landon Leakspill and Ivan Yoder. Chevrolet Motorsports has Terry Carboni join the team and Ricky Slood leave. And Joe Gears Racing has Donald Morphy join the team, which means now there are 2 cars once more. And the Wood Brothers Racing has the same team as last season. And the new team, Alloy Wilson Racing, has Mark Burnsley the rookie and Thomas Tanrev. Now let's start with the season. Sadly, Neil Brakett died. He died while practicing for the Florida 500 this season. But when he crashed, only 3 cars noticed, and that was the King, WG Lights, and Larry Smith. This is sad, but there's an entire season that's about to happen. Donald Morphy will start at pole position, and he'll lead for the first 3 laps, but now he's out because of Dale Earnhardt, who will take the lead for 4 laps after that. But then he'll lose the lead to Larry Smith, who will lead just on lap 8 because Chuck Armstrong will take the lead from him, leading all the way to lap 28. But then WJ Lights would take the lead from him, leading for the next 2 laps. But then Ruby Easy Oaks would take the lead on lap 30 and lead to lap 36, where Chick Hicks is 3rd as of lap 36, where a bunch of things happen. Rusty Wheelhouse gets flipped! Andrew Axler is now out for 2 races, and Darren Ledfoot, Chuck Armstrong, Krusty Roder, Ruby Easy Oaks, Billy Oil Changer, Billy Ford, Ron Blaster, Johnny Blamer, and Jeremy Carfield are out! And Bill Race lost down 2 laps, and Misty Motocross and Maury Clutchburn are down 1 lap. Dale Earnhardt would take the lead after the restart and lead for the next 2 laps before the King would take the lead from him, leading for the next 7 laps. But on lap 47, Dale Earnhardt would retake the lead from him, leading for the next 8 laps, where the King would once again retake the lead from him, leading for 4 laps before Dale Earnhardt would once again take the lead. But on lap 68, it's not the King who takes the lead, it's Clint Shiftright, who will lead all the way to lap 79, where the King will take the lead from him, leading to lap 97, where Chick Hicks is 10th on that lap. But then he makes Ivan Yoder get flipped and go airborne, and he's not out! But you know who is out? Kyle Traxon. But Ivan Yoder required so many repairs that now he's down 5 laps. The King went to pit, so Dale Carr will take the lead for 1 lap before the King will return to the lead. And he'll lead for 60 laps! How does any car lead for that long? But on lap 144, Ricky Slug gets flipped by Eugene Karbareski. Why? But then Clint Shiftright would finally take the lead from the King, leading for 8 laps. But now he's out because of Ernie Gearson, who will lead all the way to lap 186. But Craig Shiftright has something to say about that. Ernie, that was mean. And also, Dale Draggart would take the lead for the next 3 laps before Dale Earnhardt would do his bump and run and lead for the next 31 laps. How? But then, luckily, the King would take the lead from him, leading all the way to lap 224, where Chickix does his thing. He's 9th as of lap 224, where Bobby Carboni's now out. And same with Ivan Yoder, who got flipped and went airborne again. But this time, he's actually out. And for the next race, too. Chickix will be suspended for 3 races because of what he did. Ernie Swerven would take the lead off the restart and lead for the next 26 laps. How? But then, WJ Lights would take the lead and lead for the next 110 laps. How does any car lead for 110 laps? But then, Terry Carboni would take the lead from him, leading for the next 2 laps, where Eugene Carbareski would take the lead from him, leading all the way to lap 390, where luckily Mark Carton would take the lead from him, leading for the next 11 laps. But then Dale Earnhardt would do another bump and run, and now he's in the lead. But on lap 410, he loses the lead. Misty Motocross also gets back onto the lead lap on lap 410. Sterling Carlin is the new car that will take the lead. He'll lead for 2 laps before the King will take the lead from him, leading to lap 415, where Ernie Gearson would once again take the lead. But on lap 426, what happens? Ken Schrader takes the lead. But he will remain the lead to lap 448, where Hall Angus would take the lead, and he'd remain the lead all the way to lap 455, where Mark Carton would take the lead for the next 3 laps after that. But then, Dale Earnhardt would regain the lead and lead all the way to lap 465, where Larry Smith would have to use all of his power to take the lead, and he'd remain in the lead for 8 laps. But then Ernie Swerven would take the lead from him and lead for the next 5 laps, where Jeff Gorvette would take the lead from him, leading for the next 9 laps before his teammate Terry Carboni would take the lead from him, leading for the next 3 laps. But on the start of lap 490, the King would take the lead and lead for the next 3 laps. But on lap 493, Dale Earnhardt would do his bump and run, leading for 2 whole laps. But then Larry Smith used almost all of his effort to pass Dale Earnhardt, but he lost the lead, and Bill Racelaw got back onto lead lap. But who took the lead from Larry Smith, you asked? It's Terry Carboni, who will take the lead on lap 495. But then Ernie Swerven would take the lead from him, leading to lap 498, where Sterling Carlin would take the lead from him, leading on the last lap to win the 1994 Florida 500. So Sterling Carlin gets his very first win in the 1994 Florida 500. And now, here's the top 20. There's actually a couple surprises, like Daryl Draggard in 5th, mostly to honor his fallen teammate Neil Brakett, Davey Apex in 17th, and Ward Burton in 20th.
Remember to press the notifications button, which goes ring, ring, ring after you press it. And lightning strikes back, and that's as if you subscribed, of course. And thank you for watching this entire video.
You're probably asking, why was Larry Smith in 19th? Well, he had to take a pit stop to get more fuel because he spent all of his effort trying to pass Dale Earnhardt. So, he fell back to 19th position. And stay tuned for the 1994 Piston Cup season races 2 to 35.
KA Bullets YouTube channel.
Hurry up, now tell us why you're here.
Murray Clochburn will start at pole position for the second race, but then the King would, what does the King do? He leads for 477 laps before Clint Shiftwright would be out next race because of Sammy Smelter. That's gross! And the King would end up winning the second race, which is good for the King. But for Tim Lugnut, it's bad because he's fired! And Kyle Traxon starts at pole position! Besides, Mill Torquey Pistons replaced him with Ralph Carlo, who actually qualified! And Landon Leakspill, who also qualifies now, out for the season on lap 70 because of a bad crash. But Mark Carton would lead for 195 laps before Ruby Easy Oaks would be out with an engine failure on lap 350. But Ernie Swerven would almost win the third race, but he lost to Dale Earnhardt, who wins his first race of the season also being the 3rd race. And also, Hall Ingus would start at pole position for the 4th race, but surprisingly, Nick Charger qualifies, and he's 37th as of lap 53, where Ivan Yoder would get flipped 7 times! How does any car flip 7 times? And Paunchy wipeout. Also an airborne in the same crash that was caused by Ryan Thunderbolt Jr. Why? But Ernie Swervin would end up winning the 4th race, which is actually good. But besides, Bill Racelot would start at pole position for the 5th race, where Rudy Wash Tire would lead the most laps with 34. This was a very competitive race. But Chick Hicks would wreck 20 cars, including Bill Racelot. But Chick's brother John does a pit maneuver on Krusty Rotor. But Dale Earnhardt would almost win the 5th race, but luckily, it is Jeff Gorvette who will win the 5th race, his very first win. Dale Earnhardt was not actually very upset to Jeff Gorvette winning the race. Larry Smith would start at pole position for the 6th race, but now he's out because of Chick Hicks, who will wreck 14 more cars. But Ernie Gearson would end up winning the 6th race. He wouldn't start at the pole next race. That would be Ernie Swervin, who would start the 7th race, where Clint Shiftright would end up going airborne because of Eugene Karbareski. Oh, but he's also out next race, which is good. But Chick Hicks wrecked Eugene Karbareski. And also Bradley Locke, who's out for the season. And luckily, Ernie Swervin would win the 7th race. But unluckily, Kyle Traxon would get another pole. And he's out because of his rival, Chick Hicks, who wrecked 16 cars. Ivan Yoder would go airborne on lap 79. But Mark Carton would almost win the 8th race. But luckily, the King was the winner of the 8th race. But Daryl Dragger would start at pole position for the 9th race. And now he's out because of Chick Hicks, who wrecks 21 cars total. Since Misty Motocross was one of them, Claude Scruggs had something to say. And WJ Lights would only lose by 4 feet to Larry Smith, who wins the 9th race. The 10th race is started by Ernie Swervin, who's also very good at getting pole positions these days. And Gerald Leadfoot's out on lap 1 due to an engine failure. And Ernie Swervin himself is out on lap 6 because of Chick Hicks, who wrecks 18 more cars. And Kyle Traxon would be for 150 laps? How does any car be for that long? But now he's out because of his rival, Chick Hicks! Why again? Oh, but he's out himself, luckily, because of Dale Earnhardt, who was actually cheered when he wrecked Chick Hicks. And also, Bobby Carboni would win the 10th race. Misty Motocross would start at pole position for the 11th race before Ivan Yoder would go airborne again on lap 5. The BJ Lights is out because of Mark Burnsley, who's now his rival. Ryan Shields gets flipped on lap 53 because of Chick Hicks, who will wreck 8 other cars. And Claude Scruggs had to check if Ryan Shields was okay, because that's how bad the flip was. But Ryan Shields will have to miss the rest of the season, unless if he can qualify for the Dynaco 400. But Chick Hicks will wreck 10 more cars, and his brother John will crash Clint Shiftright and Ron Blaster. The King would almost win the 11th race, but he sadly lost to Dale Earnhardt, who will win the 11th race. He doesn't get the pole for the next race. Rusty Wheelhouse does, and he starts at pole position for the 12th race. But Chick Hicks will wreck 11 more cars. Now Winford Bradford Rutherford is out for the season because of Chick Hicks, who's luckily out because of Kyle Traxon, his rival. Paul Ingus would wreck Kyle Traxon later on, but he'd sadly lose to Rusty Wheelhouse, who wins the 12th race. Mark Burnsley would start at pole position for the 13th race, but then Chuck Armstrong would lead the most laps, leading to lap 71 from lap 9, but Rusty Wheelhouse would get flipped on lap 84 because of Chick Hicks, who wrecked 6 more cars, and Buck Schooner would be out for the season. Ivan Yoder would go airborne 5 times on lap 157, once again because of Chick Hicks. Why? But Davey Apex would lead 80 laps, which was more than Chuck Armstrong, and WJ Lights would almost win the 13th race, but in the end, Ernie Swerven wins. Wait! He only lost by 8 feet to Dale Earnhardt, who would win the 13th race. Eugene Carbareski would only barely start at pole position for the 14th race before Andrew Axler, who started second, would lead for 76 laps, the most out of any car in the race. And Kyle Traxon is 4th as of lap 352, where Aiden Blocker is now out for the season! Same with Greg Candyman, who are both sadly out for the season. But Kyle Traxon would be suspended for 6 races because of what he did. Clint Shiftwright would end up winning the 14th race. Mark Burnsley would once again start at pole position for the 15th race, but then Jeff Gorvette would pass him and lead for 168 laps, and Rusty Cornfield goes airborne on lap 99, and Ivan Yoder would too, but twice because of Chick Hicks! Why do you make other cars go airborne? And Billy Oilchanker would almost win the 15th race, but now he's out on the very last lap because of Chick Hicks, who wrecked a couple other cars you might have heard of. The King only lost by 5 feet to Ernie Gearson, who wins the 15th race. He'll start in 4th next race, but Dale Earnhardt would start in 1st. But his rival Bill Racelot would pass him and lead for 293 of the 350 laps. Chick Hicks would wreck 31 cars, and he does a pit maneuver on Bill Racelot, which means now he's out, pushing the total up to 32. Chick Hicks would sadly win the 16th race. Darren Ledfoot would start at pole position for the 17th race. Remember, Ron Blaster cheated to get the pole position. So, he charges up to the front and leads for 2 laps before Chick Hicks would wreck 17 cars. And Ernie Swerven would only lose by 8 inches to Jimmy Speed Car, who would win his very first race. And WJ Lights would start at pole position for the 18th race, where he'd quickly lose the lead to Hall Ingus, who leads for 148 laps. But sadly, Chick Hicks will wreck 8 cars, including Michael Cartrick, who went airborne on lap 325. But there's Ernie Swerven, who leads for 70 laps. How? But then Jeff Gorvette would take the lead on the last 5 laps to win the 18th race. But Ernie Swerven would get pole position for the 19th race, where Ricky Slood would end up leading the most laps with 65. But now he's out alongside Johnny Blamer, who went airborne on lap 180 because of Chick Hicks, who wrecked 16 cars. And Billy Ford luckily avoided Chick Hicks and almost won his very first victory, but WJ Lights would instead get yet another victory, winning the 19th race. Kevin Phillips luckily got pole position for the 20th race, but sadly, Chick Hicks would wreck 12 cars on lap 238. But luckily he's out because of Kyle Traxon, who would win the 20th race. making it another sad race. Dale Earnhardt would start at pole position for the 21st race. And now Mark Landis has a career-ending crash, sadly, because of John Hicks. Why? But he will be suspended for the rest of the season for what he did. And since Darren Ledford's also the number 82, he'll replace him for the rest of the race. Billy Oilchanger would be out on lap 66 because of, yeah, you already know who it is. And that's what he said. Sammy Smelter is out because of Chick Hicks! Well, Sammy Smelter does stink. Mike Yankee doesn't stink though, but he's out for 9 races because of Jonathan Melcher! Why? Oh, and he's back too. Why? And sadly, Chick Hicks would wreck more cars. Dale Earnhardt would end up almost winning the 21st race, but luckily, it was Hall Ingus who won the 21st race, which is good. What's even better is that Mark Carton got pole position for the 22nd race. What's not so good is that Mac Icar had an engine failure on lap 10. But Ivan Yoder got flipped and went airborne 5 times! And now he's out for the season because of Chick Hicks, who wrecks 12 cars! And Mark Carton would almost win the 22nd race, but Clint Shiftwright would win it instead, winning the 22nd race. But Andrew Axler would start at pole position for the 23rd race because of Chick Hicks, who cheated and wrecked 30 cars. James Cleanair is out with 4 to go because of Chick Hicks, who says this. That's very mean. But Larry Smith would end up winning the 23rd race. And the top 10 doesn't make a lot of sense. Ryan Thunderbolt Jr. would start at pole position for the 24th race, but now he's out because of Chick Hicks. Why do you wreck so many cars? But Greg Locke, he's out, but for how long? Sadly, Greg Locke died. When his tire went loose, he went airborne really high, but then he crashed onto the infield, and he was found dead a few moments later. The King and Mike Yankee noticed, and also the good cars of Larry Smith, Bill Racelot, and Mark Carton also noticed. But his younger cousin, Bradley Locke, also had something to say. Mark Carton would end up winning the 24th race. Sadly, this video would have to end on a low note because the video is already getting too long.
Remember to press the notifications button, which goes ring, ring, ring after you press it. And lightning strikes back, and that's as if you subscribed, of course. And thank you for watching this entire video.
I'm sorry this video ended on a low note, but races 25 to 35 will be out soon enough. Oh, and we'll be happier.
KA Bullets YouTube channel.
Hurry up, now tell us why you're here.
Before the 25th race, Ernie Swervin's now out for the season because he hit the wall. Kenny Wheelhouse will replace him for the rest of the season. Do you know who caused that crash? Kyle Traxon, who will be suspended for 10 races for causing the crash. Clint Shiftwright would start at pole position for the 25th race, where Chick Hicks would end up wrecking 13 cars. And Owen Drivewell is out for the season now. And Billy Ford would lead the most laps of the race out of 400. And also, Chick Hicks would almost win the 25th race. But luckily, the King would be the one who would win the 25th race. He only starts in 8th the next race, but Andrew Axler starts in 1st, where he starts 26th race, but then Chick Hicks would wreck 20 cars! And he wins the 26th race, which is sad. And here's what he had to say about it. Yup, that's the Southern 500. And also, Hall Ingus would start at pole position for the 27th race. Would go airborne on the last lap because of Chick Hicks! Why? But Murray Clutchburn would end up winning the 27th race. He starts in second to Bill Racelot, who would win. Actually, nope. Start at pole position of the 28th race, where Chick Hicks would wreck 22 cars. Terry Carboni would only lose by 2 feet to Kenny Shiftright, who would win his very first race in his Piston Cup career. The King, who finished 5th in the last race, would start first in the 29th race. But now he's out because of Mark Burnsley. Why do you wreck the King? Who has any nerve wrecking the King? But now he's out because of WJ Lights. Yay! And also for avenging the King. Also, Chick Hicks wrecks 14 cars. But Dale Earnhardt would win the 29th race. Ernie Gearson would just beat him to pole position for the 30th race, where Andrew Axler would end up leading 48 laps before being out because of an engine failure. Clint Shiftright would end up leading the most laps total with 69. But Chick Hicks has to ruin everything by wrecking 8 cars. And also, the King would lead these laps, almost winning, but then Larry Smith would be out on the last lap because of Dale Earnhardt, who does a bump and run. Ruby Easy Oaks would almost win the 30th race, but he loses to Claude Scruggs, who wins the 30th race. And here's what he has to say. Did Missy Motocross even listen to this? Rusty Wheelhouse would start at pole position for the 31st race, but then Chick Hicks wrecked 10 cars! Why? But Rusty Wheelhouse would stay in the lead for a lot of the race, almost winning, but Dale Earnhardt has to win the 31st race. Andrew Axler would start at pole position for the 32nd race, but on lap 4 would lose the lead to Ruby Easy Oaks, who would lead for 250 laps before being out because of Chick Hicks, who wrecked 16 cars across the race. And also, the King only lost by 4 feet to Eugene Carbareski, who wins the 32nd race. Once again, Rusty Wheelhouse would start at pole position for the 33rd race. Daryl Karcher says this like usual, but Krusty Rotor is out for the season right when the race started, and Chick Hicks wrecks 15 cars, which included Krusty Rotor. And also, Rusty Wheelhouse would almost win the 33rd race, but sadly, Chick Hicks wins the 33rd race. Jimmy Speedcar would get his very first pole starting the 34th race, but then Mark Burnsley is out because of WJ Lights, which actually makes sense because Mark Burnsley wrecked the King, and also he led the most laps this race. And also, Rusty Wheelhouse would almost win the 34th race, but once again losing to Dale Earnhardt, who would win the 34th race. Oddly, Ward Burton starts at pole position for the 35th race. And also, Sterling Carlin would end up leading the first 8 laps after Ward Burton. But then, Terry Carboni would lead from laps 11 to 20 on the 35th race. And also, Mark Carton would take the lead after him, leading all the way to lap 33. But Dale Earnhardt would lap the field, except for these 4 cars that you see here. Chick Hicks, who is a lap behind, mind you, wrecked 21 cars! Why? But Terry Carboni almost won the 35th race, with Ernie Gearson winning the 35th race. 1 race to go. And also, that means now he's in the top 4. These 8 cars can mathematically win the Piston Cup this season, with Dale Earnhardt well out in front. Larry Smith and Hall Ingus are only barely in it though. And these 4 cars are actually all won a race, but are unable to win the Piston Cup. Rusty Wheelhouse even won 2, which is more than some other cars that can mathematically win.
notifications button, which goes ring, ring, ring after you press it. And lightning strikes back, and that's if you subscribe, of course. And thank you for watching this entire video.
2 more rants about who can win the Piston Cup or not before you go. 1. Why can Chick Hicks mathematically win the Piston Cup this year? And secondly, how on earth was Rusty Wheelhouse not in the top 10 for most of the season?
KA Bullets YouTube channel.
Hurry up, now tell us why you're here.
Sadly, Brian Johnson and Thomas Tanrev will be retiring at the end of the season. And what's even sadder is that neither of them qualified for the Dynaco 400. But Mark Carton is the one who would start at pole position for this race, and he would lead for the first 6 laps before Billy Oilchanger would take the lead from him, leading to lap 17 before Larry Smith would take the lead from him, leading to lap 22, where he'd lose the lead to the King, who would lead all the way to lap 28, where he would lose the lead to Terry Carboni, who would lead all the way to lap 31. And his teammate, Jeff Gorvette, would take the lead from him, leading for the next 6 laps to lap 37, where WJ Lights would take the lead from him, leading all the way to lap 44, where Dale Carr would take the lead from him, leading for the next 5 laps, before Murray Clutchburn would take the lead from him, leading for the next 11 laps to lap 61, and now he's out alongside Brush Kerber, Ken Schrader, Kenny Shiftright, Jeremy Carfield, Johnny Blamer, and Jonathan Melcher, who are out as well, same with Davey Apex, and Michael Cartrip being down 1 lap because of Chick Hicks! Why? But Rusty Wheelhouse would take the lead off the restart and lead to lap 87, where Hall Angus would take the lead from him, only leading on lap 88, until Andrew Axler would take the lead from him, leading for the next 20 laps, before Eugene Karbareski would lead the next 3 laps. After that, where Mike Yankee would surprisingly be out because of an engine failure. And now the King would take the lead on lap 114, lead to lap 218 for 104 laps! How does any car lead for that long? And Ruby Easy Oaks would take the lead from the King, leading to lap 237, where he's out because of Kyle Traxon, who would take the lead to lap 246, where he goes airborne because of Rusty Wheelhouse, who leads to lap 251, where he'd lose the lead to Ernie Gearson, who would lead for just 3 laps. Why? But Jeff Gorvette would take the lead from him, leading for 4 laps, before Bill Racelot would take the lead from him, leading to lap 265, where he'd lose the lead to WJ Lights, who would lead once more and lead for the next 5 laps before being out because of Mark Burnsley, who lead 2 more laps. But then Dale Earnhardt would take the lead from him, leading to all the way to lap 300 for a total of 27 laps. How does any car lead for 27 laps? But then Hall Angus would take the lead from him, leading for just 12 laps. And he's out alongside Clint Shiftright, Eugene Karbareski, because of Chick Hicks! Why? Luckily, Michael Cartrip gets back on lead lap on lap 319, where Billy Ford would take the lead and lead all the way to lap 333, where now he's out because of a bump and run from Dale Earnhardt, who will lead for the next 4 laps, where on lap 338, Andrew Axler would take the lead from him. Actually, it's lap 339, but well, on lap 347, Ernie Gearson would take the lead and lead for the next 11 laps before he'd lose the lead to Bobby Carboni, who would lead all the way to lap 363, where he'd lose the lead to his older brother, Terry, who will lead all the way to lap 368, where Mark Carton would once again take the lead, all the way to lap 374, where Chick Hicks is 7th on that lap, where he crashes Sterling Carlin, Bobby Carboni, and Michael Cartrip. Bill Racelot is now down 1 lap. Same with Mark Burnsley and Jimmy Speedcar. Billy Oilchanger, well, yeah, he just left the race. But Henderson will take his place as the racer for octane gain for the rest of the race. Jeff Gorvette would start in the lead after the restart and lead for the next 11 laps, where Rusty Wheelhouse would take the lead from him, leading for the next 2 laps. And you know this guy, he is Chick Hicks, and he takes the lead all the way to lap 392, where he'd luckily lose the lead, but it's to Dale Earnhardt, who will lead for the next 4 laps, before the King will take the lead from him, leading on lap 399. But on the very last lap, he'd lose the lead to Ernie Gearson. But Dale Earnhardt would pass him on lap 400. You know who else would? It's none other than Mark Carton, who is in second place as of lap 400, the last lap. But Dale Earnhardt is still the leader. 3 wide to the line. But Dale Earnhardt would end up on top and win the 1994 Piston Cup. And here is the finish. Mark Carton's only 1 foot behind Dale Earnhardt, and Ernie Gearson only 2 inches behind Mark Carton. And here are the season results, with the King dropping the 4th just because he didn't have enough fuel to finish the last lap. And luckily, Chick Hicks is behind him. Jeff Gorvette tried getting into the top 5, but Chick Hicks is very bad car, so he didn't let him. Rusty Wheelhouse pushed himself up to 7th place after finishing 6th in the Dynaco 400. Larry Smith fell back to 8th, and Terry Carboni fell down to 9th. Hall Ingus, for crashing out, fell all the way to 10th. And WJ Lights, who also crashed out, also fell to 11th in the standings. Even though Chick Hicks kept wrecking Dale Carr and Bobby Carboni, they made it up to 13th and 14th respectively, and Ken Schrader is in 15th. Sterling Carlin had a very good season, moving all the way up to 16th this year. And Bill Racelot sadly fell down to 17th because of Chick Hicks! Mark Burnsley, in his rookie year, will finish 18th for his first race. Oh yes, about Andrew Axler. Andrew Axler and Maury Clutchburn fell out of the top 20 because of Chick Hicks! Clint Shiftwright also had a lot of DNFs, thus finishing 19th, which is really bad because he was the champion last season. Kenny Shiftwright finished in the top 25, even though he got his first win. He should have deserved a spot in the top 20. Kyle Traxon would have finished higher if he wasn't suspended for a lot of the season. And also, Ernie Swerven fell down to 35th because of his season-ending crash. Ward Burnton, despite doing well for the last few seasons, has never finished in the top 40. But Ron Blaster somehow finished above him, and Ricky Slug behind Ron Blaster. Ryan Thunderbolt Jr. is still in the top 40. Billy Ford also had a good season, finishing 37th. And Jimmy Speedcar, who was pretty consistent qualifying, but not so much during the race, he did finish 38th in the final standings. But Mike Yankee made it back to the top 40.
Remember to press the notifications button, which goes ring, ring, ring after you press it. And lightning strikes back, and that's as if you subscribed, of course. And thank you for watching this entire video.
There was not enough time to react to every single detail of the top 40. But Claude Scruggs came very close to being in the top 40, but he didn't finish in the top 40. But what else is weird is that Krusty Roeder is still 30th, despite the fact he had a season-ending crash this year. Jeff Burnton did not finish in the top 40, which made his older brother sad, because they both wanted to finish in the top 40. But here's what else. The 1995 Florida 500 will hopefully come out soon enough.